So in our previous video, we finished off the login section of our application. So users can now log in and we get access to the user model of that logged in user. So we're now at a point where a user can register and they can sign in, and we can then control that user via the authentication middleware or even the authentication guards that are already built into Laravel, just like we could in previous Laravel applications. But there's more to Fortify than just registering and logging in. We can also create resetting and password functionality. Now there are a few steps to this to get this working, but don't worry, we're going to go through each of the steps now in this video. The first thing we need to do though is set up an email server for development, and we need this because the password reset will be sending an email to the user with a reset token within the email. So if you've followed along with any of my other videos, you'll know for development I use MailTrap. Now MailTrap is a free service that allows you to create a mailbox which you can use for development purposes. So I've just come over to MailTrap here, and you can see down here the integrations. They have a Laravel integration, and this gives you all the SMTP details you need to put in your .env file. So I'm just going to copy these, and then over in my .env file I'm just going to overwrite them key value pairs with the details that MailTrap needs. And you'll notice in Laravel 8 normally at this point, if you're running the PHP Artisan server, you'd have to bring that down and then bring it back up so it picks up this configuration change. But if I just open my terminal up here that I've got in PHP Storm, you'll see here that it's automatically stopped and restarted the server. So in Laravel 8, it looks for changes in configuration files and then automatically restarts the server for you, so you don't have to do that. That's a real handy time-saving feature if you do use the PHP Artisan serve command. Now let's just come over to the root of our project and do a PHP Artisan root list. We can see here in our roots, we don't actually have any password reset roots that we can route to. And this is because we've not enabled that feature yet. Well, in fact, in one of the earlier videos, we actually disabled that feature because we weren't using it at the time. So let's re-enable that. So if you come over to the Fortify config, and that's in the config folder and fortify.php, you can see right down the bottom we have the Laravel Fortify features. And we commented out the reset passwords functionality. So let's just uncomment that. Then back over in the terminal, if I just run the root list again, we can see now we have these forgot password roots. So now we can start building our front end to wire this into the Laravel Fortify backend. Now we need to tell Laravel Fortify where to find our views. The views we haven't created yet, but we will be creating them. So you need to come under App, Providers, and open up your Fortify service provider again. So like we set up our register and login, we also need to set up the reset password view. So to do this, we can call Fortify, and then we want to do request password reset link view. Now that's quite a mouthful. And then we just pass it in a closure like we did the other methods, and then inside of here just return a view and then pass it the name of the view you want to return. So I'm going to create one in the auth folder, and I'm going to call this one forgot password. And the purpose of this view is so a user can put their email address in and then it can send them the reset password link. So let's create that view now. So under resources, views, auth, I'm just going to copy the login.blade.php file to give us a nice start on this. I'm just going to paste that in and then obviously rename it to forgot password, which is the same name as what I've just configured in the service provider. Again, I'm using Bootstrap for this. If you're using another front end, then obviously design up your form. The two main things that you need to make sure on this is the action goes to password.request, and there's also a field called email. So for those following along with Bootstrap, let's just change this up now. So let's change the heading to reset password, and then our route is going to go to password.request. As always, make sure you've got the CSRF token, and then we've already got the email field here in place. If you are following along with another framework, then obviously make sure that the input has got a name of email. We can now get rid of the password field as we don't need that, and then we can probably just get rid of these extra items here, forgot password, and we'll probably leave don't have an account in case they've landed on this page by mistake and they want a link to go and register. So let's just check this page out. So the first thing we need to do is clear our cookies like we have in previous videos, because we can't get to the password reset page while we're currently logged in, because obviously that makes sense. So over under application cookies, this is in Chrome, and then we'll just clear them cookies like we have done in previous videos. Once you cleared your cookies, then head over to forgot-password, and you can see we now have our reset password view that we've just created then. Now you'll also notice over in the code I left the error messages for email still in there. Let's just have a quick look at that. So you can see here I left the blade directive in error with email, so it's looking for any errors for email. So Laravel Fortify will pass an error message back down if it can't find the email address. So let's just test that out first. So I'm just going to type a fake email in of fake@fake.com, and I'll just hit this reset. And you can see now our error messages are working as we expect. We can't find the user with that email address. And the next thing we're going to do is actually put in an email address of a registered user on this application. And what this process will do is it will send a reset password email out to the user. Now for the end user, they won't actually know kind of what happens there. Has that passed or has it failed? But luckily Fortify will actually pass down a status for us that we can actually display out to the user. So let's make sure in our code we are picking up this return status and displaying it out to the user. So back over in our code, maybe somewhere above the form, I think, we want to check whether a session status has been set. So we can do an @if in Blade, and we can say session, and is there a session of status set? And then let's just end this if block. So if there is a status within the session, let's just display it out. So I'm just going to use the standard Bootstrap alert banner here. And then inside of here, I'm just going to print out that session status message. So if the password reset email was sent successfully, the user's redirected back. Laravel puts a status within the session, and then we're checking if there is a status in the session. If there is, then we're just going to display it out. So now let's give all of this a try and see how it all works. So over in our reset password form, I'm just going to use an email that I registered the user with before, and then I'm just going to hit that reset password link. And you can see this actually gives us an error here. So this is something I forgot. In Laravel 8, you do need to set the sender address. So let's jump back over to our env file. And you can see here we have a mail from address. So in here, you'd probably do something like no reply at yourdomain.com. So I'm just going to do that, no reply, and I'm just going to do test.com for here because it doesn't really matter too much in development. I'm just going to save that. And then you can see down in the terminal here, I'm using PHP Artisan Serve, and Laravel has restarted the server for us. So if we just head backwards again, now I'm going to try and resubmit this form. And you can see now it's redirected us back to the reset passwords page. And it says, we have emailed your password reset link. So over in Mailtrap now, I can see here, I've got a reset password notification. And you can see here now we have the standard Laravel 8 reset password email, and it's got us a reset password link. And we can see down the bottom here, we can actually see the full link, and it's got a token attached to it and the email address that sent the request. So the next thing we need to do is tell Laravel Fortify where to find this view. At the moment, we haven't created the reset password view. So over in the Fortify service provider, if we just call Fortify again down here, and then this time we want to call reset password view. And again, this takes in a function, but also this time we need a copy of the request object because we need to be able to get that token out of the request. So we can just pass in request here, and then Laravel will inject that automatically for us. And then inside of here, again, we just want to return a view. And I'm going to create one in the auth folder again. I'm going to call this one reset password. But then as a second parameter, we want to pass down that request. So I'm just going to call this request and then obviously pass in that request variable that we just injected into this closure. So now we need to actually create this view and pick up the request object. So I'm just going to copy the forget password blade file that we just created just to save us a bit of time here. And instead of calling this forgot password, I'm going to call it reset password. So now again, this requires a couple of things to get this working. So we need to send a post method again, but instead of password request, we want to send it to password reset. Now we can leave the email field we actually need that, and it's exactly the same. Just make sure it's got a name of email. And what we can do is fill this in from the request object. So if you remember over in our reset password email, part of the URL is / reset password and then / the token, but then it's also appending on the end the email address. So we can pick that up and put it out in and auto fill it into the form for the user. So over in our input, I'm just going to get rid of the placeholder, and in its place I'm going to do value, and then I'm going to open up the curly braces, and I'm going to get the request that we pass down to the view, and then get the email address. Now we're filling in that email section of the form for the user. There's 3 more fields we need to add. But before we do that, I'm just going to get rid of this session status here, as we don't need that anymore. Okay, so the other fields it needs a hidden field for the token. So to do this in the form, I'm just going to create a new input, and it's going to have a type of hidden, and then the value is going to be the token of the URL. Now again, if we just jump over to our reset password email, and as you see, Laravel builds the URL of / reset password, and then / and then the token. So we need to access the URL or the root to get that token out. And we can get this out of the request object that we passed down. So in value, we're just going to go into that request object again, like we did for email. But this time we're going to go to the root method, and we're going to get out of the root the token. And in case you're wondering how it knows what the name is here, it's because it's defined within the root. So if you just do a PHP artisan root list, and you can see down here, this URL is made up of 2 parts. So it's a reset-password, but then after it's expecting a token to be passed in. And now the Laravel root method stores that in whatever name you've given it here. So Laravel Fortify does that for us, and they've called it token. So there's a variable within the request object on the root method called token, and then that is how we can access it here on the request object inside of root, and it's saying get me the token part of the URL. And then the final 2 fields is obviously the new password inputs. So I'm going to save myself a bit of time, and I'm going to head over to the register blade.php file and copy these across. So if you're not following along with Bootstrap, the main things you need to look out here for is that a password has a name of password, and the password confirmation has a name of password_confirmation. I'm just going to change the value of the button from reset to update. That seems to make a bit more sense to me. And then finally, we need to update the route that we're going to be posting to. So we need to post to password instead of reset. We want to do password update. Now I've just noticed here on the input, I didn't actually put a name in. So we need to make sure there's a name of token in there. So now just to run over this again for all the people following along who are not using Bootstrap, the main things you need to note of here is you need to be making a post request to the action root of password update. Obviously you need your CSRF token as always. You need a hidden input named token, and you need to get that token's value from out of the root, and you can do that with the request root token. You need to pass in a field of name email, and we can get the value from the URL because Laravel passes that back with a get parameter, and you can get that from the request email. You need a password field with the name of password, and you also need a password confirmation field with the name of password_confirmation. So now that's all the things that we need. Let's just give this a try in the browser. So over in the browser, I'm just going to open up that reset password notification email and click the reset password link. And as you can see, this is redirected to our reset password page we just made, and it's populated the email address for us. So the final thing we need to do is reset our password. So I'm going to fill in a new password and then submit this form. Now if there's any errors, it'll come back and it'll display them errors out into the error array that, if you remember, we're picking up at the blade directive @error. And then what this will do is it'll redirect us to the login page so we can log in with our new credentials. So as you can see, that has now redirected us to the sign-in page. So that means it was successful. So now let's give it a try with our new credentials. Now I'm just going to hit the login, and you can see now you're now signed in with your new credentials. So that is how you create a password reset flow within Laravel Fortify. In the next video, we'll look at how we can set up email verification within Laravel Fortify.